Good afternoon and welcome to our second Implementation Excellence webinar for this year. We have three school leaders with us today to talk about impactful literacy improvement. Now, I'm going to go through each of them to get them to explain, what their role is in their context and also sort of what challenges, just a little bit more about their context, really. So I'll start with Jason Brand from Helston High School. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Jason. I'm an assistant principal with responsibility for teaching and learning and staff development at Helston High School, which is a high school of about 1,500 pupils just on the outskirts of Norwich. Our context is one of obviously being a very large school, but also a school with a very diverse catchment from some very affluent areas to the very much the polar opposite. And we have a little bit of everything, which brings with it its challenges in supporting such a diverse and comprehensive intake. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And we've also got Melinda Giddens from Hayden School. I remember meeting with Melinda 3 years ago, so it's nice to speak again. If you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Melinda and I am Head of English at Hayden. Hayden is in the Hillingdon Borough. We are a very large, unbelievable.
Oh, is it your internet? No problem. We can move on to Emma.
Hi,
and we'll...
Are you there?
Yes, we're here.
Hi. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Okay, I'll be really quick because I know time. So yes, we're in here.
Okay, no problem. I'm sure she'll return. So that's Melinda, who's Head of English at Hayden School. And we've got Emma Levins from Harris Girls Academy, Bromley. If you'd like to quickly introduce yourself, give us an idea of your context as well.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Emma. I'm the Head of English at Harris Girls Academy Bromley, which is a medium-sized academy in South London, in Penge. So our context is quite mixed. We are an all-girls school, but we have a mixed sixth form. We have quite a high percentage of students who are pupil premium and most able pupil premium students as well.
Thanks. And it looks like we've got Melinda back. How are you doing, Melinda? So just a little bit about your context.
Yeah, I've got a gremlin somewhere. Yeah, we're a secondary mixed 2,000 children, quite a diverse catchment area. We have the whole range. We have quite a high intake of EAL children now, and we've been using Bedrock for about 3 years.
Fab. Now, I mean, all of us, our aims at the end of the day is to create language-rich communities in our schools. So before we start talking about, literacy improvement and how we're tracking it and measuring it and all of those, wonderful things that, we want to show that we are having an impact, it'd be really, really interesting to hear sort of what sort of things you're doing in school to drive literacy improvement. Before I invite Jason to speak, everyone that's watching, feel free to make comments and ask questions on the right-hand side. And we will come to all your questions at the end. So, Jason, would you like to talk us through sort of some of the strategies you've put in place to really improve literacy and create a language-rich community?
So we are focused literacy through lockdown. We noticed a significant decline over the last couple of years in engagement with reading, and also just anecdotally from staff in the quality of literacy from students. So we have formulated a plan which is part of our whole school improvement, very much targeting two aspects, which is engagement with reading and improving the amount that our students are engaging with reading, and the other is explicit teaching of vocabulary. So we have put, I don't know how much detail you want me to go into here, but we have essentially a set of plans around increasing reading engagement, around we've reintroduced something we used to have, so drop everything and read. We have restructured what we do with some of our tutor time literacy to have guided reading support through the tutor program. And we have also thrown the kitchen sink at rewards for library use and things like that. And we are really pushing, as a whole school community, being a reading school, with all staff and all students engaging very visibly with that. And when we get on to the impact aspect, we are, you know, very closely monitoring the levels of engagement that we have. The other aspect is part of our curriculum. So we are obviously Bedrock School. We have been using, this is our 3rd consecutive year of using Bedrock. So that is part of how we support our younger students with vocabulary acquisition. We've also done a lot of work with departments through our curriculum. And very explicitly, we have it's SEEK. So select, explore, select, explore, explain, consolidate, which is a 4-step process which all departments are using for the delivery of new vocabulary. So taking the word, breaking it down into its prefix, suffix, or roots and stems, exploring the meaning of the word, the meaning of linked words, explaining it, and then obviously consolidating it in the context of that subject. And we have had a real push across our entire curriculum to adopt this common approach, so that we are spending a lot more time actually just talking about words and the meaning of words and their links to other words, to help build that understanding and essentially schemas for students to start putting that all together. So that's sort of where we're at the moment.
Fab. I've got 2 questions from that. First, what's your subject specialism, just out of interest?
I am a physicist. So
I mean, there you go.
Science.
Across the curriculum. And I'm assuming this came with a lot of CPD.
Yes, so this has this is one of our whole school priorities. So yes, we have devoted quite a bit of centralized CPD time, and departments are devoting some of their department time to working on the resourcing and development of this delivery. Yes, definitely.
And in terms of the SEEK, do you have that sort of visible on posters across the school, or is it something you teachers are aware of, but the students sort of, you know, they're doing it naturally?
It isn't. We haven't got it up on posters across the wall. We've sort of been there, done that with initiatives where they appear on posters but not in practice, to be honest. So sort of I have grown to get away from that and focus on the practice and less on things like that. But it is something which is very explicitly kept in the front of our teachers' minds, as in this is how it will need to be done.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, well, I'm really excited to hear more about that. I know when I had some training with Alex Quigley, and he was, you know, referring to SEEK. I think it's a really useful acronym.
It is his model that we nicked, to be fair.
Oh, was it? Okay, yeah. There you go. I think, you know,
his model.
Why we don't need to reinvent the wheel, do we? So okay, Melinda from Hayden School, would you like to sort of outline some of the things that you put in place to just drive literacy across the board?
Hi. We have found we've had reading as a focus, obviously in English, and we've been trying to drive it across the school for many years. And I think when we took on Bedrock, it really helped us to have something concrete to show, because what we need to show is impact. And we were throwing quite a lot of stuff out there, and the children were doing reading logs. They were having some form time 10-minute slots doing literacy work, but nothing that was tangible that you could just get, you know, see the impact of it and monitor it. But now with Bedrock, we do 2 lessons for homework every week, and because of obviously everything that Jason said, we're doing exactly the same in a sense. When they came back from remote learning, we realised that there's a huge problem with writing essentially, and we introduced more literacy lessons. So we gave the year 8s, the Key Stage 3 children, an extra lesson, and we took one of their other periods, and changed it into a literacy lesson taught by an English specialist. And we have introduced, now we have a member of SLT who is our literacy coordinator, and she has managed to engage across the school now and make people change. What's happening now is that staff are actually talking about tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary, and they are being given strategies every week. It's just what I found most difficult is getting the message over, and even with the English staff, getting them to set the Bedrock homework, to check that it's being done, to put up the kids if it's not being done, to just have that hound dog attitude to it. And our usage has gone up incredibly, and we are getting that message off around the school, doing vocabulary tasks. The form tutors are taking it much more seriously, and so many more of the children are much more engaged with vocabulary in the classroom. And we put on our Sims reporting, we put their reading age, and we put the block that they are on. So that was reported home. The parent engagement was the biggest problem. So we have given them the parent access codes by a letter. We've sent the access code individually to every single parent. And we have Bedrock drop-in days that we organise that they can come and try out. Open evenings. We take every opportunity to, when those parents are on site, that we manipulate them into a Bedrock, into a computer, so they can try it and talk about it. So it's just a constant. You just have to keep the pressure up and keep pushing and have everything. World Book Day, it's all about reading. Obviously, we're having we've got class sets, form sets of books that form tutors can pick up, and then they read aloud with their children. We have 10-minute reading time at the beginning of every English lesson, where we do now we do a Seek style thing, a Freya model, in order to bring that vocabulary into the classroom that they're doing on the lessons at home. So it's just all has to be very joined up.
Yeah, it sounds like it's that routine, that power of practice. The students go through that learning sequence of Bedrock, and then they're seeing it in the classroom, seeing it across the board. And just the fact that teachers are talking about tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary is fantastic. And I know that your next step is making Bedrock Mapper, and using that to improve sort of disciplinary literacy as well. So that's really fantastic. It's interesting that both of you say that writing was an issue. Do you think that's to do with word processors, the fact that they were doing everything sort of on the computer and it just automatically corrects, or is that just me being old-fashioned?
No, I think it's to do with the fact that when do children write at home, unless it's for homework or school-based? Most children don't write. They don't use letters anymore. They don't even, it's all text in. And I think it's really having an impact now. We're really seeing the consequences of that.
Yeah, because they had maybe 2 years of practice lost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Emma Levins from Harris Girls Academy Bromley. Would you like to sort of outline how you create a language-rich community there? I know we've spoken to Charlotte Evans, who oversees literacy in secondary schools at the Harris Federation, and she was talking about fantastic initiatives, and it'd be interesting to sort of hear how you have interpreted them and how you've used them within your context.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, it's interesting. A lot of what Jason and Melinda say resonates with us in terms of particularly our big overall aim is getting everyone in the school community to understand that literacy is not just English as a department. It's, everyone's responsibility, and sort of creating that community of readers has been really important for us. I think in terms of that language-rich community, what we're really trying to drive through literacy, there's sort of 3 elements to what we're trying to do. Create that love of reading, which is something that's really difficult, and I think a challenge that we found in our school is a lot of our students just have quite a negative perception, or had quite a negative perception around reading. They weren't used to reading at school, maybe at home they didn't have the access to resources at home, or perhaps parents had sort of negative attitudes towards reading as well. So we've really tried to sort of, it sounds like, make reading fun. So have lots of competitions, have lots of different events happening in the library, make the library sort of this fun and engaging space for students. And something we found really useful for that actually this year has been getting students' inputs in terms of what they'd like to see in the library, and getting more books for students in the library. This year we participated in a penguin scheme called Lit in Colour, where they sort of award schools that are committed to diversifying their curriculum with a set of 300 plus brand new books. And getting that into the library, sort of making a big deal over that, has been really, really good to get students engaged in literature and talking about it. So we're doing lots of the love of reading side. And then we have disciplinary literacy as well, which we've been trying to push more and more. So again, thinking about literacy sort of everyone's responsibility, really trying to engage and work with subjects specifically. So looking at them, talking with different heads of department and thinking what in particular do they need to do within their subject area? How can we help them drive literacy within their subject, and create that sort of language-rich community for their specific department. And also something that we really wanted to target as well is aiming for those low ability readers, because as you both noticed, we really saw those impacts of lockdown of many students not writing, reading, or even perhaps, speaking as well, very much. So yeah, we're sort of trying to focus targeted intervention around for those low ability readers, and that's something that we find Bedrock, that just the consistency of Bedrock, having to do those 2 lessons every week is really, really brilliant for our low ability readers who might not be exposed to those sort of high level or engaging texts at home otherwise. And so
yeah, and actually, that human narration is they're being read to, which is really powerful if they're not being read to at home. So in terms of your student voice for the library, that's really interesting. Did you have a survey?
So we tried to do sort of focus groups. Our librarian is really, really brilliant. So she sort of talks to students, and we go through that way. And also we get our English teachers to try and talk to students. And we also get our form tutors. We're really trying to encourage them to have conversations about literature as well. So like Jason was saying, we do drop everything and read. So for 10 minutes every day in tutor time, our students have to read. And during that time, we're really trying to encourage our form tutors to go and have conversations about reading with their tutees, and also to be reading themselves. So students can ask them, oh, what are you reading? And they have conversations about that. And also tutors can notice if a student is perhaps reading a book that is maybe not engaging for them, or if they've been reading that book for the whole year, they can direct them. So I would say it's about sort of empowering teachers to have those conversations with students around reading.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting because I know that Melinda mentioned class readers for tutor time, and getting tutors to model that reading out loud and that reading fluency, which again is really powerful if they're not being read to at home or haven't had that experience. We're having some really fantastic comments from I think there's here we go, Anita Baker, who said, yeah, we have drop everything and read. But teacher led, so it's kind of a communal thing and a conscious curriculum. But yeah, so quite interesting conversations going on there. I brought this up because I like to bring it up in every single webinar, the EEF recommendations for literacy in schools, and all of you are ticking all these boxes, disciplinary literacy, teaching tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary, and developing that reading skills, and I think we'll come on to the reading for pleasure, reading for purpose, and reading for knowledge, making sure that all of those are happening across the curriculum. It sounds like we're all familiar with the tiers, but yeah, that tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary is crucial across the curriculum. I'm just going to zoom in. This is just just to show some of the teachers out there. I think this is always a really great example to show actually it's about teaching that vocabulary. They know the concept, so they know, you know, it hasn't rained in months, the farmers use new ways of watering the crops, but actually it's that vocabulary that's tripping them up, because they haven't been exposed to it. So if we can increase that exposure, we're going to improve their chances across the board, and particularly given all of your context being genuinely comprehensive, it's leveling that playing field if students haven't had that exposure previously. So I'm going to ask this next question. So how do you track literacy improvement at your school currently, Jason?
Well, I suppose the ultimate end game, we mostly track the impact of all of this through reading age. That's the ultimate end point, although obviously that changes relatively slowly. And at the moment is just a massive gap between chronological age and reading age, and an even bigger gap for our pupil premium students. So what we are focusing on at the moment as part of our school priority and raising the profile of this is doing it in stages, and very much at the moment what we are tracking and acting on is engagement. So for 7s and 8s, they all complete Bedrock, and we are closely monitoring, and our literacy lead acts on the data, and we have students who we reward, students who we intervene with to varying degrees. For the older students, and to a certain extent for those younger students, we are tracking their use of the library, and we also track their general engagement with reading when it's expected, so in tutor times, in drop everything and read. And essentially we have, as part of our we use a system called class charts, which is our, you know, behavior monitoring thing, and there is a positive mark and a negative mark for has engaged with reading, has not engaged with reading, and essentially at any point that reading should be taking place, whether that's in an English lesson, in a drop everything read, in a tutor, and so on, for the students who are engaging sensibly, a positive mark goes on. For the students who are not engaging sensibly or don't have their book or so on, the negative mark goes on. And that allows us to look at student level for who is engaging with that. We also use, outside of things like Bedrock, Accelerated Reader, which gives you, as part of the data that churns out of that, estimated time. So we sort of track roughly how quickly students are finishing books, and then obviously by the quizzes on there, roughly actually how much they have read and understood the book. And part of our English curriculum is that students get a lesson a fortnight in the library, which is where the English department use that data as part of their discussions, as I think it was Emma was talking about, those sorts of things, for talking to students and checking the quality of the book that they're reading and nudging them to read something a little bit more appropriate. And that takes place once a fortnight in the library with their English teacher. But at the moment, what we are, just because it fits our priorities, all of our tracking really is focused on that engagement and how much individual students are engaging with the processes we've got on. What we'll then hope is that by the end of the year, we can see a bit of a narrowing in the reading age data to show that we're having some actual impact on that. But it's too early in the year for that to really show anything at the moment.
Yeah, that is the thing. It is a long-term commitment, I guess, and it is that ripple effect. But yeah, hopefully by the end of the year, if you're getting them engaged, there's going to be action, you know, and progress from that. But yeah, no, really, really interesting. And I know that from our previous conversations, you got quite a large proportion or percentage of pupil premium students, or students eligible for pupil premium funding, I understand, Jason.
Compared to locally, I think there are probably some parts of the country that are much higher than us, but yes, about 35% of our cohort, which for schools in the local area is a lot higher than most of the local schools. So I know there are probably people sat listening to this though that have got far higher percentages, to be fair.
Yeah, but tracking that, the closing of the gap, because you mentioned, you know, the impact on lockdown. might have been greater. And actually the Education Policy Institute recently released the impact, which we've all seen in the classroom, so I won't dwell on it too much, but it'd be really good to see what the long-term impact of all the things you put in place will be. So Melinda, how are you currently tracking literacy improvement at your school?
I'd have to echo everything that Jason's just said. It's through obviously the reading ages, but it's also something less tangible than that. I think ultimately it's through their assessments in their subject areas, and their English assessments, their exams at the end. It's through looking to see if they have managed to be more literate, to have more ambitious vocabulary. It's about listening to them in the classroom. Are they using better vocabulary? I mean, it's astonishing. I still get quite shocked as to how limited their vocabulary is. Even the year 11s have come back, and they just it's incredible the amount of vocabulary they don't have, and therefore they can't write properly because they haven't got the vocabulary to express their thoughts. So everything we're doing at the moment is to try and get that to happen and to expose them to it. And I think in the last year, I've just asked Cameron to do an impact report for us. And actually the gap now between the PP and SEND and DA and non-SEND is there's only 1% between them in their vocabulary acquisition. And in our impact report at the end of the first year of using Bedrock and looking at our reading ages, there was quite a considerable gap, but it has closed. And I think that is due to the real push we have had. Once you establish systems, you can establish the dynamics of it, and everyone needs to be doing it. However, then the hard work begins, because you have to really monitor that it's actually happening. So we introduced 10-minute reading time about 5 years ago, and all the good children, the readers, they bring a book in and they read. There's always that core group who don't. And how do we deal with them? How do you get them to actually love reading? And it's about the whole school working towards that end and doing that just religiously, going in the home, talking to them, getting a TA to work with them, doing intervention. We don't have detentions in our school. We call restorative conversations. Everything's about giving children chances, and it's making them try to understand and try to give them the opportunity to get involved in the reading process. We have lots of competitions, but I think it is actually working now, and we are beginning to see a closing of that gap, especially in the usage of Bedrock, and because it's such a concrete tool, it's such a good indicator of what's happening. So yeah, I mean, everything that Emma and Jason have said, we're all trying to do the same thing, aren't we, essentially? And it's just consistently pushing, checking. Are they doing it? Oh, and the 10-minute reading thing, we've now introduced lots of different tasks and tried to get teachers across the school as well, when they're doing their literacy at form time, to get children talking. Like Emma said at the beginning, it's about saying, what book are you reading, and doing this, call it chatterbox, and just getting the chat going and getting teachers to read out examples of what they're reading. I've read this, it's a really good extract. Just making it more viable and usable, for children friendly, just trying to push it, basically.
Yeah, and I think the fact that you've got class readers in every single classroom that has tutor time in the morning, it's visual as well. They're seeing these books everywhere. And it's making it more accessible and just something that is talked about, and they're more word conscious. Great. Okay. Thank you.
Even those who don't bring a book in because they're weak readers. They don't want to put themselves out there. They're not interested in reading. They're whatever. They see it happening around them, and the more they see it happening, the more they see their peer group talking about it, and the more they see that it's just something that is going to do them some good.
Yeah, and it builds that confidence as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just small wins, basically, and it is the confidence and getting them to enjoy it. Like Emma said, that love of, we're trying to establish a love of reading, and because we're such a huge school, we can only do one library lesson every other week. which I think is a shame. It'd be good to have more down there, but no, it's yeah.
But yeah, having the tutors model the reading, you know, with them and reading along, that is really lovely. And just when you were saying it's surprising how limited their vocabulary is. Currently, 25% of all 15-year-olds have a reading age of 12.
Yeah.
So you can imagine, you know, to access all GCSE papers, generally you need a reading age of at least 15 months. So, you know, it has a knock-on effect. So the more we do, you know, the better. Right. Okay. Emma, would you like to talk us through, you know, what you've got in place to sort of track and measure? And I really liked, Melinda, there that, you know, you brought in the sort of intangible as well, you know, the anecdotes of what you're hearing in the classroom and seeing, and just good practice. It is, you know, good literacy is good teaching and learning, as Jeff said. So, you know, everything that you do is going a long way. So Emma, yes.
Yeah, so similarly, we primarily use reading age data. So they'll do their reading age test twice a year, and then we'll sort of look at those trends.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
Just because all three of you have said this, just to double check, are you all using NGRT? I know you might be star reading.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So NGRT, that's just to clarify for listeners.
Yeah,
no, we use star tests. So our reading tests are the star ones.
Okay, brill. It's good to sort of have an idea.
Yeah, obviously, I forgot to mention that obviously that's what we do at the beginning of year 7, the beginning of year 8, and at the end. So at the end of the year, we do another reading test, the same reading test, and then we can see what has happened. Have they improved? And then that's a really good way of measuring impact.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so the NGRT test, something that's really good. So obviously, like all reading tests, it gives you the chronological age in comparison to their reading age. So that's really useful data. But I think something that's really useful from the NGRT test as well is that it gives you two measures of passage comprehension and sentence completion. And I'm not sure if other reading age tests do this, but essentially they get scores for these two different measures. And I think the passage comprehension is more about like inference skills, and the sentence completion is about their word knowledge. So that basically just means that when we're looking at those students who are really low readers, so like are 2 years below the chronological age plus, we can target our interventions. So they might all be in one group, but I'm reading a text together, but actually the sort of the activities they're given to engage with those texts might be slightly different depending on their scores in those two different areas. And I think for us, looking at those trends, you know, helps us develop our literacy strategy to make it more specific to target those low readers. And yeah, I think that as we were saying, sort of looking at that reading age data, sometimes it can take, you know, sometimes the results can sort of be obvious, and there'll be things that we have noticed or spoken about with students anyway. I think, you know, obviously last year when we were looking at the impacts of lockdown, obviously, as you said, this has been written about and there's been so many reports about it, and that really resonated with us when we looked at our reading age data, because what we saw, particularly I think at Key Stage 3, who maybe had less input for online learning, because teachers' resources maybe were more pushed towards Key Stage 4 and 5, we saw this sort of widening of the gap. So we actually had a percentage of students who'd really jumped up, so gone up to like the 17 plus, but then we also had a greater percentage of students who were sort of reading almost at or just below their chronological age, but then moving down. And I think anecdotally, you know, speaking to those students, that it makes sense, because I know from having conversations with students, there are some students who had their own bedroom or their own laptop, and I know one student who was engaging with like writing sessions with her favorite author on YouTube every week. And then we have students who would openly say to us, you know, we know that they had unstable living conditions, or they just didn't engage in any online learning, and that is, you know, just shown so much in that reading age data as well. So I think, as you were saying, like we track that data, we use the reading age data, but we sort of supplement that with what we know and understand in those conversations that we have with students. And also, as Jason was saying, actually library usage has been something we're starting to use more and more. And that's really interesting to look at that kind of love of reading as well. So not only like what students are taking out from the library, so what books are most popular, what do we need to get more of, but also what year groups are spending most time in the library, what points of the week are most popular for the library, things like that are things we're starting to sort of think about more in terms of how we engage students in reading.
We've had a couple of comments from librarians actually. Just now, Brenda said, you know, book flicks, not Netflix, you know, that kind of thing. Recommendations, you know, if you like this, you'll like this. All really, really great. And also a number of people have commented that, you know, they use different diagnostic tools like GL and test reading diagnostic. But essentially, we're all going for that baseline test that we can measure off. But yeah, no, really, really interesting. So I did have this here because obviously, you know, on Bedrock, you can see what words they've learned and what they've read. Now, yeah, in terms of like what impact the strategies have had, obviously, Jason, you mentioned that, you know, it's a little while before you can really measure that just yet. But if you could sort of anecdotally, you know, mention maybe an impact on the culture of the school. And I know your rewards seem to have been very popular. If you could just elaborate, that'd be great.
Yes. So, well, I mean, we are, even though we are not at a point where we can remotely look at the impact on actual reading age, we are closely monitoring the engagement, and we like the engagement last year for lots of reasons with things like withdrawals from the library had fallen through the floor. We were struggling with engagement for Bedrock and all the rest of it. We have put a significant wodge of cash, to be honest, into rewards, explicitly targeting literacy. So basically to the tune of £100 a month on a variety of rewards packages, some for whole tutor groups, things like, so we do canteen vouchers, so you can go get yourself a free cookie or cake from the canteen, through to Amazon vouchers, £10 Amazon vouchers for individuals. That all together, we have managed to have a significant impact on levels of engagement. The positive and negative marks, which we have been running for ages, are swinging significantly more positive than negative. And the withdrawals from the library for the first half of this term, we back to just short of our record ever library withdrawals. So last year we were with the withdrawals from the library were fewer than 50% of the rates pre-COVID. With all of that we have thrown at it, we are back up now pretty much just short of where we were the year before COVID, which was our record use. So we are tracking a positive impact on engagement. And then, as I said, it will be the end of the year that we will hope to start seeing that impact on the actual reading age data.
That's great. In terms of, I like the tutor group prizes because they're doing it as a team, and it generates that sense of competition between tutor groups, I guess.
It does. And we have a house system. So although we have year group tutor groups, so year 7 tutor groups and so on, we have a house structure for our pastoral system, and an awful lot of competition within our school is tied to that house structure. So being able to use that just fitted really well for our context, because the kids are used to competing as tutor groups and as houses against the other houses, the other tutor groups in their year group and so on. So it was quite an easy in for us to leverage that for some gain.
Lovely. And I'm wondering whether you ask the students, you know, would you prefer a trophy or like or these vouchers for the canteen, or, you know, is it just you just know what they like?
To be honest, we're just fairly mercenary about it. So we do food and money. But that's sort of the more wider thing. That tends to be what the rewards are, and the kids are used to that. There are also trophies and house medals and the like, but you know, most of our students are pretty mercenary, to be fair.
They're motivated by that. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I know that you have to head off, so do feel free if you would like. Would you like to sort of conclude, or?
Yes, I can do, if that's all right. I have
Yeah,
tried.
that's fine.
There were a couple of questions for me,
Yeah.
which I did try and answer in the question thing. So I hope that has, there
was just one last question I noticed from Anita. What are the new figures,
yeah,
Jason?
that's what I was
library
just, sorry, that's why I
there
was
you go.
umming and erring, because I'm trying to search through my emails from the thing. So we the highest we ever had was 1,580 book withdrawals a month, which was September 2018. We are currently averaging 1,564 books a month withdrawn from the library, which might sound a lot, but to be fair, we have 1,260 students in our main school, so a little bit over a book per person in our main school is the rate, but we are only about 15 short of where we were. So I have tried to answer the questions. I hope that has met what.
Yes, we've got a big thank you there, Jason.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you ever so much for this opportunity to participate in the webinar. And I hope that what I've been able to share has been useful. And I'd also like to say it's been really useful, because while Emma and Melinda have been talking, I've been writing down some ideas of things that we can have a think about to move ourselves on a little bit further. So it is really interesting to hear what they've had to say so that we can learn some lessons from them.
Yeah, fab. I'm actually not finishing yet, just to everyone that's watching. We still want to hear from Melinda and Emma. I was just very conscious that, Jason, you had to head off.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you. And it looks like we've got more people that would be fab to have on our webinar next time from the chat. But so, Melinda, would you like to sort of talk us through what impacts you've seen, if there have been any, and you know where you're at with that?
Okay, again, obviously it's too early to get any kind of definite impact figures. We have from the Bedrock information, the vocabulary gain, that is a definite impact that we've seen, and the usage has gone up considerably. We're up by 80% usage. The children are far more engaged, and again, that's come from just pushing and getting, you know, we have we use Satchel or Show My Homework format for putting on, so I can see when teachers are setting the homework, so I can monitor and make sure that it's being set religiously every week, and then I can go in and see if it's being done as well by the children, and then you can easily pick up which children are not doing it, and then you can go to the teacher and have discussions and look at how can we support those children, and then we literally go and get them from their classes at the end of the day or at some point, and we take them to a computer and we say, what is the problem, why are you not doing it, let's sit down and do this together and get them started on it. And we just go through those children that need that real intervention because they're really not doing it, and find out if there's any obstacles at home. Generally it's just pure, they just don't want to engage. So we're turning that around, and that will show an impact, because those are the children who are normally, you know, they are the DA, the SEND, the PP children, and they need that extra bit of help and push to get going. So hopefully when we do the next reading test, it will show, and the Bedrock improvement will be reflected in the reading test that we do at the end of the year. So we're looking at different reading tests actually, because I have problems with some of the reading tests out there being particularly valid. I noticed Anita Baker said, I think somebody said that, or Sandra said about the validity, they have problems with it as well. So we are looking at different reading tests. But yeah, I mean, everything that I've said before really, it's just the impact is in, we should be seeing it in the classroom every day, in their talk, in the way they engage with their books, and yeah, basically.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that impact is in the culture and how word conscious they are, and all of those things. But yeah, it would be really interesting to see where you're at sort of this time next year as well. But yeah. I know it sounds like it's a lot down to, you as the lead teacher really driving that. And then now you've got, your key stage leads beating the drum, the department leads across the school beating the drum. And, it's that staff buy-in.
Yeah. Yes, it is, and I saw somebody put a message on the chat about the fact that that's the biggest problem they've had, that it's an English thing, and we had that for years. It's an English thing. Why are we doing literacy? It's an English thing, and that has been a real problem. But we are now with the constant push and the constant going on and on and on, and it is changing. And as I said to you before, Alex, the mapper, that is our next step, and that's what we're taking on board, and we're going to introduce. We've got a program for getting it in, and that is something concrete that every subject area will have to do. And so instead of having a word of the week, or oh yeah, we're doing vocabulary, we kind of just have a word bank on our schemes of work, it will be something concrete that we can say, we can see it happening, and it'll be something we can monitor and track and look at, and the children will be aware of it because they do it in their they do it in their homework lessons, and they're used to that format. So every subject area cannot get away with it any longer. They will have to engage, and they are starting to. So,
and it will make their lives so much easier once it's been mapped,
exactly,
and taught. Then they can assess without laborious marking for themselves.
Exactly, they're going to love it.
It's that first planning
over the hard work.
Yes, exactly. But that's really, really good news. And thank you, Melinda. Emma, what impact have you seen, if any, and where are you at with this in your conclusions?
Yeah, I think like Melinda was saying, it's just we see the impact every day. It's hard to measure the sort of exact impact that we're having, but I think it is in those conversations, and particularly sort of doing book looks and looking at students' writing, the level of their writing and their ability to deal with sort of talk about big ideas and big concepts is definitely improved by their more extensive word knowledge, and also their engagement with things like competitions that we're running, writing competitions, sponsored reads, things like that. And we're getting more and more students actually really wanting to do those things, or being enthusiastic about them, and also things like enrichment clubs, so more students going to things like debating club and really enjoying that. And more students taking books out of the library too. I think, like Jason was saying, our library is sort of more popular than ever, and recently when we had a book launch party, we had more books taken out than ever in a sort of a single lunchtime, so like over 200 books in one lunchtime, which was a huge amount for us. So we are seeing more students sort of having conversations about reading and being less reluctant to read, and we can definitely see their improvement in their vocabulary as well, taking out or wanting to take out sort of more challenging reads as well from the library. I think is something that we see in terms of their impact. Yeah,
it's interesting. We've got Val here, as a librarian for over 22 years. She's seeing the same strategies come back, and actually it is those sort of foundational skills and that foundational vocabulary and foundation of strong reading that drives everything. And I don't think that will change. So it is really interesting that all these things come back around. And just, as a conclusion, I just thought I'd show, the Bedrock topics that students are reading if they're on Bedrock, building that cultural capital, perhaps, sparking an interest in a particular area, or, for instance, Muhammad Ali. Okay, that's interesting. I might go and take out his autobiography or biography. It's just sparking those things and enabling them to have a bit more agency and independence when it comes to choosing books. So I think we've covered that final question. And I do want to sort of highlight to everyone that there are lots of resources that we've made, and that I'm sure account managers would be more than happy to share with you. So please do make the most of those. Loving all of this stuff about, actually, if you're sharing books, it's building that self-esteem. It's not just about attainment, as the Oxford Language Report, and we all know, it has a huge impact. And actually, I was talking to one teacher, Sophie Baldock at Crofton School the other day, and she has said, actually, in terms of teaching tier 2 vocabulary, has meant that teachers don't have to keep repeating instructions so much. And they didn't realize how much tier 2 vocabulary they were using in instructions, but actually a lot of the time students just were like, what does she mean, what do they want me to do? And that's sort of helping that access and breaking down those barriers and enabling them to navigate the world around them in school and beyond. Would either of you like to sort of give any closing sort of statements before we leave? I've been really impressed. Oh, actually, there might be some questions here. We have a few questions. Melinda talking about tasks alongside the reading. I know that you use the seek and questions. And I know that marking, you do flash marking for advanced, ambitious vocabulary. Oh, we've had quite a few answered here, so that's good. Oh, here, and I think actually we've answered most of the questions, but if I've missed any, please do let me know, Emma and Melinda.
I can't see any.
You can't? No, I think we're all okay. So I would love to, say thank you so much for everyone that's attended, made it really interactive, and thank you so much for your time, Melinda and Emma, and hopefully I'll speak with you soon.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure, and there's some amazing ideas that have come up on that chat, so thank you to everybody out there who's put all those ideas up.
Yeah,
very much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I think rewards and competition seem to be hot topics at the moment.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely. Things we'll take away. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you very much for everyone that attended.
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks.